Hey folks, welcome back to Mark Kelly Farm. It's a cold, windy day out here today, probably 40 degrees. And we're going to work on our windmill. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around and we'll show you how to put this thing back together. All right, for those of you that have been following along, you know that we found a top to go on our windmill tower, and we brought it home a few nights ago on this trailer. So because of the way it was sitting in the weeds, we had to take it all apart to get it off of the old tower. So now, while it's fresh in my memory, we're going to put this thing back together, and we've made a little stand to put it on, to work on. That's what this thing is here. Apologize for the wind. Let me get upwind so I'm blocking the wind on the phone here. So we just got an old pallet. We put a 4x4 on it. The shaft that goes up inside of the windmill gearbox is about 1 3/8 inches. So we got a 1-inch pipe up on top of our 4x4 with just a pipe flange, screwed it in, and then that way when we get this windmill put back together, we can use the tractor with the pallet forks and then move this inside the barn so it's not out here in the wind. So we're going to get putting this thing together. I got to go get the tractor out because the gearbox is super heavy. It was all Kelly and I could do to move that thing over and get it onto the trailer. So smarter, not harder. So as we put this thing together, we'll kind of show you how it works. This is the lifting rod right here, which normally, this is the windmill stub that sits on top of the tower. The gear head that we just put up there slips on this end here, and then it gets a little nut, and then this rod goes all the way up through there and pokes out a hollow hole in the top. And then if we come over here and look at the gear motor, it connects right here with a pin that goes through there. And then as the windmill turns, this head goes up and down using those gears, and it pulls that rod up and down, which in turn pulls the pump rod in the pump. If you remember our pump over there, that rod sticking up there, there's a connection from that all the way to the rod that goes up into the gear motor, and it pulls that pump up and down and pumps water. So this has a rain cover that goes on here. We're going to throw that on real quick because we don't need to get in there anytime soon, and then we'll start putting this thing together. We got our weather cover on there, covers up the gearbox, and then we put our tail on. We've got this piece of wood here just bracing it up temporarily to take some of the weight off the joint here until we get the fan on there, which will counterbalance pretty much the tail. But look at that old tail, air motor, Chicago company. Pretty cool. And then this must have been the guy that put it up. Chas Rawls, Taylor, Nebraska, or maybe he was the owner where they installed it. Couldn't tell you. But the back side of this tail has been patched. Must have been broken pretty well. They put a patch in it, covered up the C on Chicago. But I don't want to touch up the paint or anything because I like the old rustic character that it's got. So we're going to leave it just as is. I did a little straightening on it. It had a pretty good bend right here. We hammered it out pretty good. I'm going to hammer it a little bit more. Put a big hammer on one side of that and straighten that angle out a little bit better. But that's what she looks like. Had to remember how all this linkage went together, but it wasn't too bad. I didn't know until I started doing some research on these things that they self-regulated. They have a mechanism on here that when the wind gets stronger, it moves this tail around, and then it also applies the brake over here. This lever comes over and applies the brake and slows the rotor down. So did not know that it did that on its own. But geniuses that came up with this stuff back in the day had some real brainiacs. So now we need to start putting the rods in the hub up here. And it's all these rods here on the front of the trailer. They all screw into that hub, and then once we get them screwed in there, we'll show you how they work. Well, it didn't take me too long to figure out that putting a windmill together out in the wind was not a good idea. So I got the pallet forks and brought it in here into the barn. So, like I said, the next order of business is putting the spokes in here. And I brought all the spokes over. And all the spokes are identical length, so it doesn't matter what position they go in the hub. However, you can see some of these are bent, and they're all supposed to be perfectly straight, like this one here, pretty close. So I need to take the bent ones over to the shop, and we'll get the anvil and straighten these things out, hammer around, bend them around a little bit until they're all straight. We got our first two spokes in here. The end that looks like a bolt with the square head on it goes into the hub, and you put two of them that line up with each other, sort of this way. And then you screw them in until they're tight, and then these ends come together like this to where a bolt will go through there. And then you can see the ends of these are bent. That is by design, so when they're hanging, those bolts are straight when they go through the outer part of the fan. So that's what it looks like, and we're going to continue on around the hub putting on our spokes. Now do yourself a favor when you're screwing these things in, turn it as far as it'll go to where it's almost tight, and then leave it, instead of putting it out like this to where you're spinning this when it gets in the way. Just leave it down like this, and then you can spin your other one in real easy. And then when it's time to line them up, you can just do that final turn and then get your wrench, put your wrench on there, and then line them up. These square nuts sometimes are hard to get a wrench on. So just turn them to where they line up. You're good to go. All of our spokes are on. There's 12 of them in all. So now it's time we can hang our fan sections. So we'll go retrieve those and start hanging them. Got the first section on. I'm not worrying about these bolts here because we'll line all this up later and put the bolts in. And I'm just putting one nut on each side after we get the spokes lined up. And then I'm assuming this fan was on correctly because this is the side that was down in the dirt with the concave of the blade back towards the gearbox. So that's the way we're going to put it back together. It looks correct. So we'll just continue hanging the next section on. We'll hook it on here with one bolt, and then we'll take this nut loose. And I'm assuming they overlap each other as they go around. Like the next one will overlap this one, and so on and so on. So I'll go get the second one, and we'll start getting the rest of these put together. We got all of the sections on, with the exception of the last one. It needs a little repair. It is kind of broke loose from this area here. So we're going to go fix that real quick. So the middle vane here, you can see this whole section's kind of taken some damage. So while we're in here, we'll take advantage of having the anvil. We'll get our dead blow hammer and straighten some of this out as much as we can. But you can see the rivets have popped loose here. So what we got to do is we got to grind these rivets out of here and then re-rivet this. I have some cold rivets that we'll use on this. So we'll get to cutting these out. So with these cold rivets, you put the rivet up through the hole, you put a hammer on the back side or something heavy, like a hammer. And then we have a little tool on the end of our air hammer that's concaved. So you put that right on top. That's all there is to it. You can see closer the rivets that we did. We did one on this one also because it was coming loose. But nice and clean. Now we're going to fix this little bow in this vane real quick. Just hit it with our dead blow hammer. That's fairly straight. That's about all we need to do. So all the way around the outside, we got one nut on here. Everything's overlapped well. So now we're going to come back through and we're going to put bolts and the lock washer and the nuts on all of these while the outside is still loose. And then once we get all those finger tight, we'll go around the outside. We'll put the washers and the nuts on these and then tighten them all up. That's looking pretty good. She's all together. It's all balanced now, so it's much easier to deal with. I can rotate it around real easy. Well, we got all of our center bolts in and tightened, and then that allowed us to come back out here on the edge and put in our lock washers and our nuts on all of them. So now, because these are square head, can't use a ratchet or any kind of driver. Got to use the old box end wrench. It's going to take a while, but we're almost there. There she is, folks. That one sexy windmill or what? I love it. I tell you what, that was the best puzzle I've ever put together right there. That was fun stuff. But can't wait to get this thing up on the tower. I'm going to go through here. There's a few blades that have some bent areas on them that we're going to come through and straighten up, like this one here. We'll get in here with like a crescent wrench and pull all this over. There's another one, probably where this thing got hit. But we'll tweak it here and there as needed. But she's all together. Couldn't be more happy. That is super cool. Can't stop looking at it. I can't wait to see it out on the tower up in the yard. All right, folks, that is it for this video. We hope you enjoyed our little windmill puzzle project. I know I sure did. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We're going to start working on the tower for this thing here soon. And we got a couple more things to do in the kitchen. So we'll see you then. Love you guys. Catch you on the next video.